Hello and welcome back to the Layback podcast. This is Adam Morrow. Joining us today is Jack Barry. Jack Barry, you might know from internet fame as he moonlights as a few different baseball personalities. He's grown, I would say viral. Maybe it's just because I follow him, I think, from three different accounts. So he is at least viral in my network. But Jack Barry is a performance coach. He runs his own company called JB Performance. He's been doing that since late 2022. I almost said 2002. That would be very impressive if you were doing that in elementary school. But prior to that, he was at Shred, also played at Salisbury in Maryland. He's a Maryland native, and he's back home now running his mostly remote training out of his humble abode where his dog is his most common company. So, with all that, I'm going to flip it over to Jack, let him fill in any of the blanks that we might have missed along the way. So, Jack, take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a long time coming because I know that you were obviously on my podcast and you were kicking around the idea of doing your own. And so full circle here. But yeah, so from Maryland, started JB Performance in late 2022, spent a lot of time thinking of the name. And yeah, it's been great. So got about 4 to 5 in-person guys right now, which is a much reduced version of what I was doing last summer coaching for the Crop Dusters in the Cal League, to where you've got a staff of 22 guys, which is a very large pitching staff on a roster of 35. But it's been fun, enjoying the summer, enjoying having the guys around and being able to coach from somewhere other than my second bedroom here. So
And then maybe we should have mentioned as well, probably the most important piece of your bio right now is you are a utility guy in your men's league. Innings on the mound, playing shortstop. You're now a catcher, just putting up some very impressive stats, I'm sure.
yeah, so we've only had 9, a few of the last probably 3 games, and so the game changer, the stat updates are non-existent. So got 2 knocks, couple RBIs last game. They don't count, so you could throw those out the window. Also caught 7 innings. Glad because I had the opportunity to throw a guy out, and the ump sandbagged me. So just gonna just gonna push that one away and move on. But yeah, did some catching, played some center field, which to the delight of my 12U travel coaches, if I told them that I was playing center field now, they would probably look back at 180-pound 13-year-old me and say, "What the hell is he doing out there?" But more comfortable at third, more comfortable at short for sure. Definitely getting some innings on the mound here and there, closing a few games out, trying to keep the strikeout to walk ratio low and not hit anybody because as I've been told by my teammates, I need to dial it back at some points,
Mm.
because what I realize is also that most 24 to 35-year-old guys are not performance coaches that use training and throwing as a piece of their workout regimen. So I'm definitely in a unique scenario there. It gives me a level up. So we're trying to go back to back here for the championship. So
Oh, hell yeah.
yeah,
Well, more power to you guys. If I knew your team name, I would give you guys a shout out. So go ahead, you do it.
Blue Wave, Chesapeake Blue Wave.
Oh, let's go Chesapeake Blue
Yeah.
Wave. I've
See
been a
some,
diehard fan for all of the past month,
yeah. See some
and
Whitecaps rolling out there.
that's right, live and die by what the
Yep.
Blue Wave does.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know which rabbit hole to start on here, if it's the development of the 180-pound 12-year-old into now the rip beast that's on every performance kick you can imagine, or if we go from you said you got sandbagged by the umpire. This is where I was leaning before you brought up you as a youth, but one of your monikers that I've seen you kick around on social media a bunch is the Superdome. No, it is not my Superdome as a New Orleans Saints fan, but the I can let you discuss the details of the Superdome or kind of how to stay out of your own way as an athlete. But it sounds like the men's league umpire put you in the Superdome, and you are anti-Superdome.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
I'd love for you to introduce us all, at least in the Layback Podcast Network, of what the Superdome is, how you navigate it, and just introduce us into the mental world of JB performance.
for sure. So first of all, shout out Baltimore Ravens, Super Bowl champions in the Superdome, circa 2013, I believe that was. Ray Lewis's last game ever. I love Joe Flacco. I need him back. But the Superdome was a concept that I didn't even realize existed up until I started this whole pitching development journey. So I'll try and keep this concise, but for anybody who doesn't know me, my backstory, I was primarily a position player in college. Did a little bit of pitching, two-way. I was actually going to be like a full-time two-way my sophomore year. Had a flexor strain, which is appropriate for the topics that we'll eventually dive into. Basically tried to, rip a 30 pitch bullpen, not on ramped at all, besides being an infielder. And so that's what led to that, and a position change along with it. But when I graduated, professional opportunities kind of squandered, which we've talked about on my podcast as well for the both of us. And so I turned my attention to the mound. And when I got into this whole pitching development space, there is a lot of nuanced topics. There are a lot of rabbit holes that you can dive into. There's a lot of nomenclature. I mean, the verbiage that I could use here is just unbelievable, right? But I think that that's a testament to the amount of information that's out there and the amount of information that can be absorbed, which can easily turn somebody who's looking to improve or just looking to play better or just gain that extra inch into the Superdome. And the Superdome is essentially getting in your own way, getting into your own head, not allowing for your physical capabilities to do whatever the task is. And so when I first started making shirts for myself, which the current one says "Be Sexy" on the back, because that's kind of my other slogan, the anti-Superdome shirt was something I just made for myself, because it was so important to me. And I see so many coaches, especially, think that they can project their amount of expertise or knowledge onto their athletes. But at the end of the day, the athletes are where they are currently at, and they have gotten to the point that they are at, largely in part by just playing, t-ball and then moving on to travel ball and then going to their high school coach who spends the majority of his day being a PE teacher or working in a corporate office somewhere. And then he comes and he volunteers his time. And so the amount of information that they might have in coaching relating to somebody who does this for their 9 to 5 or for 60, 70, 80 hours a week, more if you're a college coach or, a professional guy grinding through the season right now. And so once you kind of project that information onto them, it can lead to information overload. And then all of a sudden, a lot of those physical capabilities are blocked by the amount of mental stimulation that you're given and just the amount of like ideas as to like, okay, well, now your back hip is doing this, or your glove side's doing this. And maybe this is contradictory to what I do because I do offer a mechanical analysis to people, where we kind of break all that down. But I try and make the information as concise as possible and basically say, like, hey, here's what I'm seeing, but also here's the solution. That's maybe a bad way to put it. Not the solution, a potential solution, a potential avenue that you could go down that I think will help. And so a lot of the way that I approach things is probably a little bit of coach's bias to where I revert back to more dynamic progressions on the front end, more infield based throws, outfield based throws. I always ask people like, hey, what position did you play when you were coming up? What other sports did you play? Because I want to give guys movement options that's going to allow for them to just get out of the stagnant position when they're set on the rubber and they have to deliver a strike or they have to throw a different pitch in a certain count based on time constraints if you're in the college or professional ranks, and just like get back to throwing a baseball. Throwing is a skill. It's just like a golf swing, it's just like a basketball shot, it's just like making a tackle in football or hurling, or uh we can dive into that at some point as well. But I think that when you can actually isolate the skill itself and then revert it back to something more nuanced like pitching, to where there's a whole nother skill set of being able to throw certain pitches and locate different parts of the zone and navigate a hitter or navigate a lineup for that matter. You can break it down to the base level first, and then you can add progressions on top of that. You're never going to go into the weight room on day one and load up 315 on Bulgarian split squats, you know? Like you have to regress the movement first back to the very basic point of the skill. And you have to start with someone's training age and just like kind of where they're at right now with all of that, and then progress things. And I think when you can actually revert back to more of just like getting better at the skill, getting guys out of their head into their body, giving them movement constraints and movement options, and just saying like, hey, try to throw the ball here, or like move in this direction and then make a throw, or get rid of the ball in this time constraint. This is the last thing I'll say before I kind of wrap this up, but my college coach for my senior year, he bought us a clock to place behind first base. And he would hit a fungo, and as soon as he hit the fungo, the clock would start. And we had to get the ball there, and I believe it was like 4.16 seconds or 4.3 seconds, because that was like the average time from home to first for a college runner. And so that gave us the incentive to literally not think about anything other than getting rid of the ball and getting it into the first baseman's glove as quickly as possible. And accuracy of throws went up. We tracked every single defensive metric. All of the defensive metrics improved just because we were not focused on like the scenario as much as we were like the very individual piece of the task, to where it's like, get the runner out, you know, get the hitter out. And I think when there's so much data and so many things involved with pitching, to where it's like, you know, mechanics and pitches and workload and all of these things, when you can revert back to, I need to get this guy out, when that guy's out, I need to get the next guy out and the next guy out and the next guy out, it just frees up the mentals so much and allows for guys to really show off what they can do physically.
And for anyone wondering the effectiveness of that clock, I suggest you go look at the historical records of the Salisbury baseball program. They tend to know what they're doing. They win a handful of games. But yet you bring up all these different things that guys have access to. They can look left, they can look right, they can look right in front of their face on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. And they can pretty much get coaching from anywhere at this point, which is crazy. But all of these points that you brought up, for me, it falls back into what we generally talk about in the rehab world. There's so many different things that are influencing these guys that they often forget who they are in the process as they're returning, because they start focusing on the rear hip load or how their throwing arm is unwinding from maximum external rotation. Whereas you should probably just consider these little things wins along the way. You put 2 plates on the bar for the first time in your squat progression back to a full lift. You threw out to 60 feet. Who cares that it didn't come from the exact same slot that you were in pre-injury, or maybe it was the slightest push in your arm action? Mm-hmm. Yes, these things can become corrosive over time if you don't address them, but it probably isn't the number one priority that you need to fix, when it's more important that you stack good days consecutively when you're returning from an injury. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear you expound on that if you can.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a renaissance going on right now too, with a lot of the other smart coaches just in this space that I respect, to where they are reverting away from video. It used to be like, we want to collect as much video as possible. We want 60 points of assessments. We want every single checkpoint that we can possibly find within a throwing assessment. We want the analysis to be 2 hours. We want the analysis to have this much detail, this many lines, this many graphs, this many, you know, angles. Now, I won't even look at a video of a guy if he's within the first 3 weeks of an on-ramp period, because I just want him to focus on just going out there and just getting reacclimated to throwing the ball. And however he wants to do that in his own specific style. If that means that he wants to play catch with the football for the first 10 minutes and then get into his throwing, that's fine. If that means that he wants to throw a few plyos or he wants to be more analytical, that's perfectly fine. I think I had an email come out about this today or yesterday, I think you have artists and you have scientists. And I think that those two things have a very distinct crossover within a lot of different variables. But there's going to be guys that are more analytical, that are going to want to take video, that are going to want to record everything. And then there's going to be more of the artist types to where they are more creative and they say, like, hey, I tried this today or I thought about this and it felt really good. Should I keep doing that? And I'm like, well, if it felt good and it yielded a good result, then absolutely, like just because I'm providing expertise for you here, you have to be intuitive about this. You have to be like very kind of internal about your response to whatever kind of stimulus you're giving yourself from a training perspective to understand how you're going to respond best. You see it a lot of time in like the fitness and the diet space. It's like Stan Efferding always says, best diet's going to be the one you follow. The best training plan is going to be the one that you can stick to. I think that throwing is very much the same way. The more consistent results that you can give yourself as far as repeatability and being able to stick to a schedule, managing your workload, chances are you're going to end up in a pretty darn good spot. It's when you start to throw in a ton of different variables and you start to worry about all the little tiny detailed things that you can lead yourself down some negative pathways. And so the consistency on the front end is going to be the biggest thing, but also maintaining that sense of curiosity and awareness to say maybe things aren't as good as I want, or like maybe I am tracking things and measuring things and things aren't getting better. So like, where is that opportunity? And you can certainly find that on your own, but I think that it's definitely in your best interest to have the curiosity, but also the wherewithal and the selflessness, or I guess like ego death would be kind of like one of the phrases to be like, I need some help here. Like I'm gonna take a, and coaches do it too. Like in your own training plan, I'm sure you can attest that like I've outsourced my training even now when I have guys that I'm coaching individually. And I had to put my ego aside to be like, I should be able to program for myself because I've done all these assessments on guys and I've written all these programs. But it's very hard to look in the mirror and tell yourself what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And so outsourcing that sort of like, you need to hear this can be the easiest way to streamline that amount of progress you're able to make in a short period of time to because time's the greatest asset we have here in on earth. So
Big time. You hear that a lot in the Olympic weightlifting community. Those who compete in that field, I've heard it time and time again. The second that I, meaning an Olympic weightlifter, starts coaching, I've effectively ended my competitive career. You
mhm.
hardly ever see those both competing and coaching at the same time versus in our world of baseball, we don't think about it, or at least historically, we haven't thought about pitching or throwing as something that technical as the skill because everybody does it from every single position. So for a while, it was just everybody does it, you'll be fine, you'll figure it out. Then it swung to you need to understand what position you're in every single step of the way of every movement you make in a throwing motion. And now we've swung back towards that athletic side, I believe. But thankfully, or those who I enjoy consuming the content of the most are the ones that understand how the data, the objectivity, all the tools can be utilized to best suit an individual athlete along the way. So it's how do we merge those worlds? When I read your artists versus scientists email, I was putting myself in those shoes. I definitely fall on the scientist side, but I would be wrong if I didn't recognize the importance of the art. I think it's the same thing with coaching and rehab and anything skill wise, really, because you have to acknowledge that, yes, there is a science to a lot of the things that we are doing. It's human movement, and there's a most effective way to do it. But everybody has individual qualities that make them different. And just because a sheet of paper or a force plate readout or even Flex Pro Grip for that matter tells you you produce force a certain way, that doesn't mean you need to be doing it the exact same as somebody else. There is going to be a path or an individual journey that you're going to go down, which I think it's incredibly important that you brought up, whether it's relying on somebody else, finding a mentor or somebody that's willing to ask those questions and take that journey for you while you focus on what's most important, which to me is yourself as an individual. I'll use this as a segue into something I'd love your feedback on, which is I can tell you one thing I did terribly in my career is I don't think I was selfish enough
Mhm.
in taking charge of what I felt I needed to do to get better. But then I don't mean to say that as in I should have been a shittier teammate. I
Mhm.
should have cared less about getting a bump down because I should have focused on my hitting or something like that.
Mhm.
No, I just mean I should have put myself in better situations or said no more or whatever it was, presented research to myself in a way that could have benefited my own career. And I think the benefit of having a coach or having others in a network is it gives you a lane to be selfish while someone else can help you explore or sprinkle in those new stimuli along the way of, like you said, oh, well, have you thought about it this way? As
Mhm.
opposed to me having to be both the guide and the student at the same time, which
Mhm.
I think is just a terrible place to be if your ultimate goal is to develop not just to what you eventually want to become, but get there as quickly as possible because, as you said, time is our ultimate enemy in this scenario.
It's so funny because I think back to 2017, 2018, when I was an offense guy. Like I loved hit. I was a hitter, that was my thing. And I thought that that was going to be kind of my next step into my post-playing career, whether it was coaching or playing or whatever. I was going to work with position players and hitters. The only guy that I can think of outside of my coaches at Salisbury or my summer ball coaches or whoever I had access to in my face-to-face direct network was, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, you might be familiar, but his Instagram tag was called Out Front Hitting.
Yeah.
And he worked with Michael Chavis, who had like those really great years with the Red Sox when he had first come up. I have no clue who he's with now, unfortunately. I think he's with the Pirates, maybe. Um, but he was like the only guy that I could think of in like the offensive space that was putting out content for hitters, like drills and swing thoughts and ways to approach hitting and development. And I want to get back to your point about like the whole like, shitty teammate thing as well, because I have a lot of thoughts on that too. But, gosh, if he had some kind of, remote offering, or if he had some way that he was able to work with guys remotely, to whereas in 2024 we sit here and you can pretty much work with anyone anywhere in the world and receive that expertise from that specific person that you like, that you trust, you like the way that they approach things, which I think is what draws people to certain different avenues of remote coaching or just coaching in general. That would have been a no-brainer for me. I would have invested my life savings in that because I wanted to be a professional hitter and I wanted to work with that guy who worked with professional hitters. As it relates to like the whole teammate thing, like you said, I don't think that if you're in the right headspace about it, it's not going to come from a place of selfishness to where like this is where I want to go and this is what I want to do and I have to, put up these numbers in order to play pro ball. And I probably fell into a bad place with that myself to where it was like after my junior year, I always had the thought that if I didn't put up certain numbers my senior year, I wasn't going to be able to play professionally, which I pretty much manifested into reality because that became the sole focus, that I focused so much on myself and not the team's goals that I was a detriment to our lineup. And I kept getting opportunities. And there were probably guys that even deserved to play over me at points just because of how poorly I was playing, because of how much the emphasis I put on my own individual performance over the team performance. But I was doing everything that I could to try and maximize my performance, which you can then circle back into the whole Superdome thing. But it was taking a Saturday night off because I wanted to get a good night's rest and get up the next day and train or lift weights. Or I didn't want to go out on a Thursday when the entire team's going out. There's some arguments to be made about social dynamics within a team and being able to build camaraderie and spending time with your teammates and forming relationships and bonds and things like that. But if you're a guy that wants to just go balls to the wall and nose to the grindstone, I've been hammering some Jocko recently. Jocko talks about it with the teams and how like if a guy wanted to like go to the library and study to get his master's, or he wanted to just go and read or do something other than like going to the bar with the boys after a tough week of training, everyone would be like, well, what do you mean you're doing that? Like, that's so stupid. Like, why would you go and study? Why would you go and read? Or like, why would you pass up a night out with the boys to sleep in and to go train the next morning? Like, we train all week. Why do you want to take the extra day? And so I think it just takes kind of like a special individual, or just a unique individual that's more in that sort of like a little bit of that scientist type, to where you're not going to take a day off until you kind of find the solution that you're looking for, or like you test out that theory, or you realize the capability of what you have in the tank. Whereas others are just going to kind of be completely on the artist side, to where they just kind of let the chips fall where they may, and they're going to be completely subconscious in their actions. And I think that that's kind of what ushers a lot of people into coaching, is that they never really find that solution for themselves. And once they can do that for other people and help them kind of offload some of that mental bandwidth, it gives them that fulfillment of being able to continue along that journey and along that path without having to give themselves the mental pitfalls in a personal sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, there's no question my life journey once my playing career ended turned into how many guys can I assist along the way to make sure my failures don't happen to them or they don't have it taken away. And specifically, my big path on that, it started, then it left it, but it came back to it with Flex Pro Grip, was injury. It was trying to keep guys healthy the best we could. And that's obviously at the core of what we're doing now. But I was led down that path because of the never ending search for answers along the way, or the
Mhm.
search for what is best. It feels like a religious quest every time I step on a field or go into a gym setting, anything like that, especially when I have other people around me that are willing to experiment as well. It's
Mhm.
one thing when I'm performing experiments on myself, but when I'm with a group that's willing to mess around and find out, I'll censor myself on this one. But the FAFO model, like, that's the
Mhm.
best. I couldn't ask for anything more. It's why I love the quote unquote pitching labs or development centers so freaking much. Yeah, the field is awesome. I love the field. Nothing will beat competing in a baseball game, but you can find out so much when you have the fancy tracking tools that we have now, like TrackMan and Rapsodo and Yacker Tech and all that, and some different baseballs and enough knowledge or enough information at least consumed where you can make a dangerous decision. And to me, that's that razor thin line where you're toying with, we're on the brink of an incredible breakthrough, or we could be setting ourselves back in historic proportions. But it's a risk I'm willing to take.
That brings up a funny story, and I'll revert back to 2021 when we actually first met. I don't think we're gonna have to cut this, but it's a funny story. So we were in Charlotte, right? And we were in about a 2,000 2,500 square foot facility, and we had about 40 to 50 in-person trainees coming in per day. And we had probably a 300 square foot office for about 15 guys, 12 of those guys being full-time coaches. My favorite part about that, first of all, was my first experience in like high level coaching. No CSCS, no nothing. And so walking in the door of there every single day, I felt like the dumbest guy in the room, which I've talked about previously is like the most beneficial thing you can do for anybody that wants to get into coaching. Just surround yourself with people that are a lot smarter than you. Because I learned so much. It felt like I was there for 5 years and it was 14 months. But my favorite part about that was that I could be sitting at my desk in our makeshift kind of cubicles. Everybody kind of had like their own space. We're all taking phone calls, writing programs, but somebody would walk in the door at 9 a.m. And before you even get to your good mornings, they're like, I figured out this thing for this guy. Or like, you know how we were talking about that thing yesterday? Like I went home and I was thinking about it, and I watched a video, and this is what I came up with. And then we're throwing it up on the TV. Or then we're immediately going out onto the floor and we're testing with it. We're jerry rigging like J bands onto our neck, and we're like setting up belts and weights and everything, like just doing the crazy stuff that you're talking about. It was very much like mad scientist type stuff with a group of 12 guys, all within the ages of 20 to 30. So you can imagine the amount of fun that we were having just with the jokes that go around with it. But like that was the most fun I think I've had coaching besides any of the actual in-person coaching that I've done with teams, And when you're a pitching coach, the walk-offs excite you. Like seeing a hitter break out of a slump excites you. Having a big inning offensively excites you. Like those types of things within a team dynamic. But within like the private sector dynamic, it's like just getting the dudes together and like training hard and like going balls to the wall to find solutions, arguing about things. If two people have disagreeing arguments, you see like the room start to separate and people kind of start to take sides. And then it becomes this big shouting match. But like after 30 minutes of delegation, you kind of come to a consensus. And yeah, it takes up a big portion of your day, but it's like very productive because the amount of portals it opens up as far as thought and things that you could potentially do within like a setting for training guys, it has so many different branch offs to that. And so that was probably like the most fun piece of like my ushering into the private sector. And so that just made me think of that. Your point right there is just like kind of diving into like the using yourself as the test dummy before you give it to anybody else, but just like the fun that kind of goes into it and seeing if something works and if it doesn't. If it doesn't work, it's like we had fun trying, and if it does work, it's like that was really sick. We tried that and we gave it to 10 guys and it worked for all of them.
Right. And the beauty of it not working is also now you know for a fact not to use that for any of your athletes. So there really
Mhm.
is no losing as long as you didn't get hurt when you were testing whatever it was, J bands around your neck, trying to ensure that you keep both eyes on home plate or something like that.
Shots of whiskey before pull downs confirmed does not work.
Who would have thought? I feel like there's research that should back that up.
So the I forget the guy's name. He was on the Lex podcast. He's like a deadlift guy. He's a power lifter, which is kind of ironic because he was an alcoholic, but now he like advocates for this shots and deadlifts thing because like apparently like a shot of alcohol raises your blood pressure, which then in turn is going to increase your ability to produce force.
Okay.
I tested it. It didn't work, like it whatever. So that was one of those failed experiments, but then I got to go to a concert afterwards, so it was kind of made sense, I guess.
Well, I appreciate you getting out in front of that, saying it didn't work. So,
Yes.
any listeners of the podcast, especially those rehabbing, we do
Or
not
or
encourage the
underage.
use of alcohol as
No.
even don't even consider it as a performance enhancer.
No.
Bad call.
Yes.
But I do want to go back to the point you made about being the dumbest person in a room. Taking that opportunity is an incredible learning experience, growth opportunity, just because of what you're going to be met with every single day and how much you're going to challenge yourself. Now, spinning that into the baseball world or even the rehab space, I think that is why you can see rookie ball guys or A ball guys have so much success in a rehab setting or when they come back, is assuming they check the right boxes and they come back healthy. Because as you know, in the rehab setting, they don't discriminate on level. You're just
Mm-mm.
rehabbing together. And in the college world, especially at the size of schools that we went to, if you're rehabbing, you're generally just rehabbing with the student athlete population.
Mm-mm.
Thus, you learn how to be a part of a new team. Your level or your identity, any of that stuff just doesn't really matter anymore. And you're cheering for somebody else just as much as you are trying to improve yourself. So I say all that to make the point that if you're rehabbing alone, find a way to be a part of a team or join something where no, you might not be quote unquote the dumbest person in the room, but being the new guy or exposing yourself to others with different paths, maybe the same injury, but a different background, or a different injury, who plays the same sport. It doesn't matter. These training rooms or rehab centers, or just being with the guys again, it's a great way to expose yourself to new opportunities to learn, a chance to get better, and really come out of your shell and flip the switch of who you used to be to this new person who you are. Because let's face it, no matter what, if you get surgery, you're going to be different. And it sucks, but it is the truth. You were operated on. You have something new in your body, and your body's likely going to have to move a new way. So if you can go through that discovery process with others, as opposed to dealing with the ego death that you might experience when you're doing it on your own, it certainly becomes a lot easier.
I've never met an asshole in the clinic. And in college, I was in there quite a bit. I had the flexor strain. I had recurring ankle issues kind of stemming off of something that happened to me my freshman year. Heading into my senior year, I had a pretty bad shoulder strain as well. And part of that was probably a slight case of hypochondriacism. I don't even know what the word would be. Like being a hypochondriac, like, oh, like why does my tongue feel weird today? Like am I gonna die? Like WebMD, like what's going on? But you're 100% correct that everyone in the training room is kind of on that level playing field to where you have to kind of go back to square one. No matter how severe the injury is, you're always going to err on the side of kind of treating it as though it's more severe than it might be, just because you don't want to have a future setback or regress yourself back even further. And so that does require you to kind of put your ego aside and shut your mouth, open your ears, listen to the people that are smarter than you, and then understand, like, hey, here's how this isn't going to happen again, or here's how we can mitigate the risk of this happening again. And then that's when you can also start expanding your relationships with teammates or coaches, saying, like, hey, I had this similar issue before in the past. This is how I got through it. Or this is how you need to fill your time when the team's on the road for 5 days and you're stuck back at campus and it's spring break and you're like one of five people in the entire town. So, like, here's how you can just like make sure that you're good and you got like some sense of community and people around you, or just like things to do to occupy your time. There's so many things that go into it besides the actual physical rehab portion. And you can obviously attest to this just with the amount of guys you've worked with in a similar scenario, that the connections that you have to make between everything you're doing in the training side, because like the training window, if it's 2 hours of your day, it still leaves 22 other hours that you got to get through. And so you better make sure that you're enjoying those 22 hours, or at least you're being able to manage them and make them productive, and you're maintaining your sanity in some way, shape, or form during that time. Because if you're able to keep the stress levels mitigated or lower, that's just going to help speed up the process of you being able to get healthy. If you're in a constant state of just like perpetual doom as you're going through rehab, it's probably just going to keep you spinning your wheels and just prolong that process of coming back. And I think that's why teams nowadays, especially that have guys that have these, from an outsider's view, seamless returns to performance and coming back from injury, they have those support services, whether it's mental health services or whether it's just dialed in rehab programs, making things more accommodating when they go to Arizona or Florida and have to go through that rehab process. I mean, the amount of horror stories I've heard of guys just getting stuck in Goodyear, Arizona in the middle of 120-degree heat in July for 3 months rehabbing, and you're the only one that speaks English there. It's tough. It's really tough. And I think that teams are starting to realize all of the different connections you need to make in order to make it work. And there's some teams that have done a really great job with that.
Yeah, I don't think I intended to get into this when we decided we were going to get on the podcast together, but now you got my wheels turning. I know you've used your platform in the past to talk about mental health in the athletics world, whether it's stuff you've dealt with or things you've witnessed along the way, and especially in the rehab process, but really any athlete, the mental health or your ability to deal with whether it's the ups and downs, the struggles, whatever it is, a changing identity or sense of self. This stuff is incredibly important. And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, matters a lot more than the flexor strain that you're rehabbing
Hmm.
or the bicep tendonitis. And it's going to be really hard to get physically right if you can't get mentally right.
Hmm.
It's one of the things that we talk about on a different podcast of mine, different network, not baseball related. Yeah, we talk to baseball people. If anybody does want to check it out, I'm going to plug myself. It is called the T Work Pod.
Oh yeah.
I do it with a buddy of mine, Grant Banco. But the reason I bring this stuff up is I talk often about my own struggle of loss of identity because for so long I only saw myself as a baseball player. And because of failed rehab after failed rehab, the only thing that I could associate the thing that I loved most in this world with was failure. And then all of a sudden, when my identity is the very thing that's getting compared to failure, that's just a terrible self reflection to be staring at every time I see myself in a mirror. And then I was, through the use of therapy, actually talking to someone. I was able to put together the reason I have this love of baseball and all these things and why I get so committed to these small topics or small little niche things in my life is because I'm an all in person. So now
Mhm.
at the ripe age of 30 years old, I probably figured this out honestly a year and a half ago. No, baseball was not my identity. I thought it was. My identity was being all in. And there's like
Mhm.
five things in this world that I'm all in on. And if there's not, or if there's something that approaches my life outside of those five things and I want to care about it, I either need to replace it in that mix of five things that I really care about, or it's just not going to matter that much to me. And I quickly realized this is a way more positive outlook to have. If I could have known this as a 22-year-old or as a 23-year-old when I'm on my third year of labrum and rotator cuff surgery rehab, I probably, who knows if I would have made it out, but I certainly would have had a lot more fun in the process instead of just, well, here's another day of me not being able to throw 90 miles per hour again.
Mhm.
This is sweet. So, yeah, I mean, I seeing your face has opened this door for me. So I at least just appreciate you showing up and allowing me to talk about this because I wouldn't have
Yeah.
talked about it on the Layback podcast otherwise. So, yes, JB Performance might not be a mental health professional, but he gets it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and like I've gone back and forth on this because I've been in a very similar scenario. I've talked about it plenty. I don't need to dive into the details, but you kind of alluded to it to where it's like you got kind of like the five things that you value and that kind of like you use to project yourself into the world. And I think that that's a very important piece of all of this is just kind of like understanding who you are and what makes you you. One of the biggest reasons that I think I fell into the pitfall initially and was kind of stuck just like even in college, just not really understanding like who I was or being comfortable with who I was. That's a big piece of it too. Because once I was able to really kind of be myself, if you would have asked me in 2021 or, mid 2022 when I was still kind of dealing with this stuff, what I wanted to do, I would have said, I want to make people laugh. I want to coach. I want to train because I really do like training. I like using myself as the test dummy. I want to have freedom. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. And I just want to I want to be able to be myself. I've always been a very extroverted person. I like talking to people. I like going to conferences and meeting a bunch of people and just, not even talking about baseball for that matter, just talking about anything we want. And once I started really kind of leaning into that, because everyone's going to have that different thing that they lean into. Like I have friends that they love to just like play baseball and play video games. And so for them to try and change and be like, "Oh yeah, I need to like start reading more or like or I need to, journal more and my coach tells me that video games are bad." It's like if you like playing video games, play video games, man. Like if you got a 2 ERA and you're feeling good and you're striking out the world, And then your way to decompress, or your way to just like, the way that you want to fill your hours is going to play video games. Play all the freaking video games you want. Granted that you're sleeping enough and you're getting quality nutrition. Not everyone is going to want to make funny videos and make educational videos about baseball and wear cutoffs that say "be sexy" on the back. But like that's just who I am. And once I was able to just get away from like the "that's so stupid," the internet troll commenting and saying "I don't like this." I think the biggest thing that allowed for me to get out of some of those mental pitfalls, because like, yeah, you're still gonna have bad days here and there. The anxiety is gonna pop up if you got work to do. Maybe something happens that leads you to a little bit of sadness, or somebody comments something mean and it hits you a little bit harder than you thought it would. The 33% rule. So I don't know if you're familiar with this. You probably are, but 33% of people are going to love you. They're going to trust you. They're going to live and die for you. They're going to be your best friends, even if you never meet them face to face. I've met some of the nicest people, some of the people that I love. I've never met them in person, but I've met them online. That's what I love about being able to build a social media brand, is that some of the greatest people I've met, I've never talked to them in a one-on-one, face-to-face person conversation, but they're the nicest dudes. I love them. They love me. If I saw them in person, we'd spend an entire day together and we'd be great. The other 33% of people, the next 33% of people are just going to be like, yeah, he's cool. I got nothing against him. Sure, I don't agree with everything he says, but he's cool. I like him. They're kind of in the middle. And then the last 33% of people are probably going to hate you, which I've come to realize in more ways than one. And so that just prevented me from trying to please everybody, because you're not going to please everybody. And I think I spent so much of my first 25, 26 years on earth trying to be a people pleaser and just trying to kind of pander to different people's personalities and what they liked and what they didn't, not even speaking what was on my mind all the time. But being myself has not only allowed for me to just like get out of that pitfall myself, it's allowed for me to relate to other people and see where they're coming from and what they're struggling with and how they would approach different situations and just why they are the way they are. And so absolutely, like I want to relate this back to the rehab space and how therapy can be a useful intervention, and just like having conversations like this, just seeing how different people deal with the own individual things that they might go through when it relates to this topic. That's been the biggest thing. It's just really kind of tapping into your nature and being true to yourself and understanding that like that one thing, if it's the UCL tear, if it's the shoulder strain, if it is the oblique strain, whatever it might be, that's one out of the other four main value points. That's one out of the other 10 value points that you can throw into this earth. And so like you got to find those other avenues that you can pour into, because if you've got five of those points to give and you lose one, that still gives you four. I love the Jim Craig quote. It's like, what is it? The leg's a long way from the heart, or bruise on the leg is a long way from the heart, you candy ass. And so it's basically relating back to saying like, you always got something to give. Never count yourself out just because one piece of your identity is gone. You hurt your arm, you can still type. Start putting your story out there. Start filming videos. Go volunteer somewhere. Take up cooking. I don't know if you could play guitar on in an internal brace or whatever, but I don't know if you can. Maybe I don't know, maybe like harmonica or something. But you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, prior to guitar, or I guess once you mentioned guitar, I realized you were dangling a potentially unreachable carrot, and then we're just chasing the same thing that we were struggling with before.
Right.
But I think what you outlined regarding breaking it down as simply as just 33, 33, 33 with the love, indifferent, hate,
Mhm.
to me, your takeaways from that, your personal approach to it, that to me is the epitome of how to be selfish in a productive manner.
Mhm.
It's taking being selfish, not being self-centered, but being selfish and applying it to life in a manner that can benefit you, your journey in sport, rehab, life, whatever. Because if you are looking out for your own well-being, to me, that is what being selfish should be when you spin it for a positive connotation.
Mhm.
Look out for yourself. Care about the way you feel. If you're having to change the way you act or interact with others or the way you approach things, You're either in an environment that doesn't suit you, or you are just not in a healthy mindset, physical location, whatever it is. Change something.
Mhm.
This is why I value being selfish. I went so long, same position as you, carrying what every single coach said, what every single teammate said. And yeah, you're going to have teammates you don't get along with. You're going to have coaches you don't get along with. Fans, I mean, don't even get started on fans if you're so lucky to play in front of these college summer leagues or pro ball teams that get insane crowds.
Mhm.
Put yourself first and understand how to deal with the ups and downs, but always ensure you know how to be yourself. So just learning who you are is a massive first step in this process. And then that opens the door, to me at least, to then the physical return.
Mhm. And I think being able to say no was a big piece of that too. Part of being a people pleaser is being a yes man. And I guess you could call them the same thing. But understanding what doesn't serve you and what doesn't serve your long-term goals. Because additionally, and you might have made this point, and I might not have just picked up on it, but like what's going to, I apologize, but like what what serves you is going to serve the people that you care about the most as well. Because when I was not in a good headspace, and I was trying to pander or say yes to everything, and I was taking opportunities that probably didn't serve myself or the people that I cared about most long term. That took a toll on the people that I do care about, friends, family, because they could see just the deterioration of the effect of just taking on every opportunity and just bouncing around from idea to idea, just trying to find that identity. And I'll bring up my mother. I don't think I brought her up on a podcast, but she always gave me tough, yeah, Mama Barry, shout out. But she was always her and my father. I'm so blessed. And I for anybody that has two loving and supporting parents in their lives, like pick up the phone, call them, maintain a relationship with them, make sure that you can eventually take care of them one day as well. But they always gave me tough love, which I appreciate because it allowed for me to just kind of listen to them and them say to me, like, you're going to figure this out, but it's not going to be easy. And we're going to challenge you and we're going to push you. And they recognize from an early age, like my dad always said, like, you're born to be on stage. And I know we've talked about like the whole thespian arc, right? Um, one of my, when I was a theater minor at Salisbury, small little anecdote there. One of my like things on my vision board was I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live one day, which, maybe it happens one day if somebody comes across the baseball niche on TikTok or Instagram and wants to throw me an offer. But coaching is very much like that, in my opinion, to where you are on stage. And I posted a funny video kind of poking some fun at Max Wiener today, but he's getting a lot of positive press in the College World Series right now because he's unique in the fact that when he walks the mound, he's smiling and he's joking around with pitchers. Traditionally, what you've seen with a lot of pitching coaches, they walk up, strong, stern approach, very stoic, and they go up and they seemingly deliver some great one-liner Herb Brooks type speech that's going to like change the tides of a pitcher's outing. But with Max, it's like he's going out there, he's lightening the mood, he's giving the pitcher an opportunity to just like take a breath, and only him and the staff at A&M know exactly what he's saying up there, but it's just a different approach. And I've talked to plenty of people that have been with the Mariners before, have worked with him in the past, and like some people I've talked to have said like they don't like him. Other people have said he's their favorite guy in the world. So it goes back to that 33% rule, right? Like it's not going to be for everybody, but the fact of the matter is that I think the reason that he is having so much success with that staff and the reason that he's taken such a massively impactful approach at that program is that he's just being true to himself and he's operating under his own principles, his own style. And that was a big reason that he got hired there. And he probably said throughout the interview process, again, I don't know, but he was like, I'm not going to change for anybody. Like, this is the way I do things and it's worked and I believe in it and I'm just going to be myself. And if it works, great. If not, fire. That's confidence in yourself. And I think that that gives you that confidence when you can just tap into your true nature and tap into yourself is saying like, if this isn't for me, that's okay because like whatever is there for me is out there somewhere and I'm going to find it if I just continue to stay true to myself and continue to be myself and trust what I'm good at and what I know I'm good at, and my skill set and my abilities, and just stay confident, know what serves me, know what to say yes to, know what to say no to, and not try to please everybody. So that was just kind of like a little one-off that I thought was interesting just based on the timing of this as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a one-off it is. Of course, timing, but I mean, everything you shared fits in perfectly with this unintentional path that we've gone down. And now we've been serious for so long, and this is with a guy that literally his mission is, or one of his missions is to provide comedic relief. So this is comical to me. I guess the irony of the whole situation. So maybe we'll twist it for a lighter note and say, hey, Jack, can you recall a memorable mound visit that you might be willing to share with the masses?
Oh gosh. So last summer was my first summer as like a pitching coach for a college staff. And every time I'd walk out there, I would think to myself, because I never really talked to anybody about this until after the summer, which is probably not the best idea on my end. But I always thought, like, what should I be saying to these guys? Because it felt like for the first couple times I did it, it was always the same thing. Like, hey, let's take a breather. Let's get back in the zone here. Usually just following a couple walks or, hit bat or whatever. Let's get back in the zone. What do you feel confident in? All right, let's start with that. Let's compete with that. Let's make that our first two strike pitches. And then we'll try and throw them off with something that might not be as much of like a hit percentage as far as in the zone rate, but maybe we can surprise a guy here. All right, good luck. Little butt tap, walk back to the dugout. And I would always joke with the head coach at the time, who I played for in high school, and I would consider him a friend now. If he threw a strike on the very first pitch after the mound visit, I'd say, see, it works every time. As far as memorable mound visits, that's a good question because in college, so our head coach at Salisbury played for the D-back. He won a World Series with the D-backs in 2001. Infamously, he has probably the slowest walk to the mound ever. I would call it more of a waddle. Shout out Coach Brohan if he's listening. But he would take his time out there and he'd come up and he would be a little bit more on that comedic side where he'd be like, well, you're not in the zone right now, so I do everything I can to get back in there, Just like trust your stuff. Just go out there and I want you to compete. I want you to compete. And that would be it. And I'd be like, well, it's easy for you to say, Mr. World Series, right? Like just go out there and compete, right? So I don't know if I had any like comedic mound visits really. I know it's kind of like a dud answer for you, but
Whatever. It's
yeah,
good enough.
yeah.
No, it's you shared good insight. I can tell you one that I had as a coach that I was really excited for, and I felt absolutely fell short of my own expectations. It was a kid who kind of falls into your Superdome category. I like to think now that I just used it in the wrong context. And if I would have used this with this kid as a 21-year-old instead of doing it with him as a 16-year-old, it would have worked significantly better. But we're in I guess, the regionals for the Dixie World Series. I don't know if Maryland competed in that, but just as it sounds, it was the Southern States series for like high school summer baseball, pretty much. But I was coaching a team out of Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, and geography lesson for the day. Louisiana doesn't have counties, they have parishes. So it's the county just outside of New Orleans is what it amounts to. But I'm walking out there and the kid pitching trained with me as well. So he and I had a great relationship. And my plan was to go out there and just not say a single word because he and I had enough of a rapport relationship that I knew at some point that he would just start talking shit to me.
Mhm.
And that was my goal. It was for him to just be like, well, what the hell are you doing out here anyways?
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Literally nothing. Coach told me to take a visit, so I came out
Yeah.
here. I have nothing to say to you.
Hmm.
I'm just here to hang. I'm just in a new spot. And I think it fell short because I ended up getting bullied by the rest of the infield who I didn't
Oh.
expect to come out. And I think it was just one of those, like, all my coaching had been in the college world where at that point I lived in the just let the boys play world. I
Hmm.
did my job. We practiced, we did everything. I have no impact on this game.
Mhm.
And what am I going to tell this kid? Throw strikes? No shit. He knows to throw
Yeah.
strikes. So I figured
Right.
I'd just go out there and let him rip me a new one or something just for like coming out there. And no, I just got bullied by a bunch of 16-year-olds for going out to the mound and not giving them like a defensive alignment or something like that.
Yeah,
So
brutal.
I had such a high expectation and it just fell short. I'm still convinced that if I did that now in like a college summer league, I think it would hit. But
Yeah.
whatever. I hesitate to chalk it up as a loss, and we'll just chalk it up as a learning experience where the crowd just might not have been right.
There you go. It's back to that original point of testing things, right? So it's all about sample size too. You got a 50% hit rate if you try it in the college summer league and it works. And then you could
That's
say,
right.
well, this is guaranteed to work half the time as of right now.
50% of the time it works every time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So sticking on the lighter side, I want to know what goes into these video creations for you. You mentioned kind of funny timing wise when we have the Texas A&M pitching coach going out to the mound. You recently released a video where the beloved pitching coach secretly berates his pitcher and maybe threatens his family. We to each his own. Uh,
Yeah.
it probably worked. I like to think that strategy would have worked because you just had such a good relationship with your pitcher. But
Yeah.
I want to know what goes into the creative process of thinking of these videos, how you piece them together. Obviously, you're a one-man film and acting crew. So I just got to know how you work through the Superdome to publish these things.
Yeah. I made the joke with one of my athletes the other day that I'm like the Hunter S. Thompson of pitching coaches, kind of, just because of like the way my brain works. There are some nights that I'm up, or mornings, I guess, that I'm up at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and an idea will hit me. And I know from experience that if I just let that idea go and I'm just like, I'm tired, I want to go back to bed. But I got this idea that I'm gonna wake up and that idea is gonna be gone. And it might take me 6 months to rediscover it. So I have a notepad next to my bed. I have a notepad in my kitchen. I've got a whiteboard in my kitchen. I've got whiteboards right here, right back here. I got notepad right here. My notes app in my phone is an absolute cluster F word, just with like different ideas that I write down. But I ponder a lot. For how connected to my phone and like tech I am, I really do make an effort to just like disconnect. So most often times when I'm in the car, as psycho serial killer as it might seem, like I'm not listening to anything, no podcasts, no music, nothing, because that's kind of my time to like let my brain just kind of go in whatever direction it wants. I try to limit my TV intake, but I will be watching the College World Series tonight. I don't watch a ton of shows. I used to watch a lot of movies, which I think helps with like memification of ideas. But walking the dog, no headphones, no inputs, because just like being out in nature, I just think about my business. I think about different athletes that I'm working with and different things that they're going through. But I like laughing. I like funny things. And so like in the boys group message with my friends from home, if they say something funny, that could spark an idea for me. Or if something funny happens in the College World Series or in Pro Ball, like a guy running onto the field at a Reds game and doing a backflip before getting tased, like that could branch off into a video idea. It's also very much based on like my own experiences playing. So like I've done videos based on coaches that I've played for in the past, which Chris Farley, this is like me kind of diving into the nerdy side of like my intrigue with like acting and theater. Chris Farley drew his inspiration for his what's that guy's name? The really energetic motivational speaker guy.
Down by the river.
Down by the river. The inspo for that was his high school football coach, which I don't think a lot of people know. And I was like, that kind of sounds like me with Coach Sires. Coach Sires, love ya. He was the reason that I won the talent show my freshman year, and he branched off into a lot of impersonations at team gatherings that were not supported by the university directly. But yeah, I think that's kind of where it comes from. It's just like always having a little bit more of that like actor kind of gene in me. I'm always wanting to be on stage and being comfortable behind a microphone or being comfortable in front of people, just again, just kind of being myself. And so once you release one and it does well and people give you good comments on it or people comment a certain thing or reply a certain thing. And it's kind of like a spider web graft where things just kind of branch off into different ideas, but you got to get them onto paper. Otherwise they'll be in one ear out the other. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking me through that because I certainly need to get better at the content creation. At least I'm comfortable enough to talk on a podcast. I'm getting there slowly but surely.
mhm.
Now, re-anchoring us in the baseball world before we finish up here, I want to know what you have coming down the line. Obviously, you're working with more and more athletes as the days go by. It seems like your name is becoming more popular as a performance and throwing coach. But what are you excited about either researching, learning more about, or implementing with your athletes or just for yourself and your own journey?
Yeah, I think the workload stuff, and this is one of the things I guess I wanted to talk about, which is especially in the summertime. I'm gonna produce more like written and probably video-based content around this, but I think the summertime, especially, just staying within sort of like the seasonality of the niche here, of the baseball community. The summer can be a really tough time for guys with workload because there's a lot of boredom that surrounds it. And workload, obviously, as it relates to risk of injury and the implementation of arm care. And so the way that I kind of structure arm care now is I break up things that are going to be localized more towards the fingers, the wrist, the forearm, which are, you've got plenty of a lot of smarter people on your podcast that can dive into the nuances of that than I can. And frankly, I don't think people want to hear me talk about the boring stuff anyway. Um, Not that it's boring stuff. I shouldn't say that. I apologize. Smart. I like listening to that stuff. And then shoulder-based things as well. Mobility is a big focus of my own training right now. Bryce, who is a friend of yours, a friend of mine as well, going through his mobility program right now. Shout out Bryce. So that's
I,
exciting.
I suppose I'm going to interrupt just to say, for those of you who don't know Bryce by his actual name, he is Movement Through Medicine on Instagram.
Medicine through movement.
Oh, shoot. I said it in the wrong order. All right.
All good.
Medicine Through
All good.
Movement on Instagram.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bryce.
Um, but I think that, and I think so like obviously making sure that guys can account for their workload. We've gone back and forth about the golf thing. Pitchers love to golf, but it's going to take a toll on your workload from a direct or indirect perspective, however you want to kind of look at that. I'm really just I don't know, from an excitement perspective, I would just say just the general direction that things are heading. I think that things are heading in a really positive direction, just with the amount of smart people out there. I think there's less disagreement and more collaboration now than ever, to where people are starting to take more of like a respectful approach to disagreement in the end goal or the hopeful end goal of getting to a conclusion that's going to help guys out and just giving them the opportunity to access high level training in a lot of different capacities. So it doesn't have to be the local strength coach that you've worked with for 10 years. God bless those people. Oftentimes they're taking on a lot of different roles, wearing a lot of different hats, but the blessing of social media and the blessing of the internet is giving you access to people that you might have never had the opportunity to work for, or connect with, or receive their expertise from. And so that's what I'm really just kind of excited about. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom in the world, but I think that this is also the best time to ever be alive is right now. And you just need to kind of like see the brighter side of thing. It's kind of like another meme, like the one guy looking at the dark side of the bus, the other guy looking out at the bright side of the bus. Like you gotta stay looking at the bright side of the bus. Everyone's got a phone, everyone's got the internet, everyone's got the opportunity to connect with people and access an encyclopedia of data on any topic that you could ever want. And so use that to your advantage. Train like a madman, connect with the earth, get some sun in your eyes and on your body, and get outside when it's warm out. Go for a walk with no inputs in there. Limit your stimulation, let your creative mind flow, and get your ideas out there and be true to yourself. Look up in 6 months and see what happens, and see what kind of place you're in. So
Yeah, and I guess to stick on the Texas A&M thing, that everything that happens, just say good and move on. Since you mentioned
good,
Jocko earlier too.
good. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Just good. It
Yep.
happened. Good. You'll
Yep.
be fine.
Hmm.
Yeah, how's the grounding journey and everything you have going on? Have you been doing that for a while, or you're just showing it to the world for the first time now?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out Turner Givens here because him and I are good friends. He gave me I'll say I think it was my first curse word, curse counter one. He gave me some shit for it because we used to make fun of it, and we thought it was woo wooey, very very granola-esque. But I'm kind of a granola guy now, with the organic and the sun and everything, not wearing sunscreen, all that good stuff. But yeah, I've been doing it for on and off for a couple years now. Started just doing it like in men's league. I think I even did it in college a couple times. Like get to the field early. We had a turf field, but it just like felt good to just walk around barefoot. So I try and stay barefoot as much as I can. Like people in my apartment complex will look at me crazy because I'll literally take my dog for walks barefoot, like on the concrete, just because shoes are a construct. I think we can get along fine without them. Unless you're wearing spikes and you're trying to rip heaters off a mound, then you probably need them. But yeah, there's a ton of good studies. There's a guy I follow on Instagram called The Grounded Athlete. He makes grounding shoes. And so they actually like you can wear shoes and be on grass and receive the charge from the earth. I think there's a lot of benefits for it as far as like lowering inflammation. And I think generally it just gets people moving and gets people outside, which I think we need more of when you spend most of your day behind a screen or behind a desk or behind a microphone or doing spreadsheets or working in an office or whatever, just getting out and connecting with nature, connecting with the earth. It's been great. I love it.
And if anybody, I would say, needs that spun for the potential performance benefits, what I would say, if you don't want to read studies, if you don't want to go on the deep dive that Jack has gone on, at a minimum, I think being barefoot forces you to be more in tune with how your foot functions with whatever surface is below it. Thus, you will improve your balance and your overall awareness. If you improve your ability to understand your foot's relationship with the ground, or whatever surface it's on, you likely will be able to use the ground better. I'm just going to throw my little 2 cents on how I utilize it in the performance world after we heard about Jack's whole process. And yes, I would say if you do have a turf field, I that's one of those micro joys in life. I don't think there's anything more comforting than being like 60 degrees, but like really strong sun, and that turf is just warmed up and you can feel that heat coming from the turf right on
Mm,
the dogs.
mm.
Nothing like it.
It's like when the barber puts the hot shaving cream around the back of your neck. It's like, ooh,
Hmm.
ooh, I wish that lasted longer than 2 seconds. Gosh, hit me again, brother.
Yeah, see, I can't
Yeah.
spend money on that. Otherwise, I would just be wasting money on shave after shave. I just need the whatever shaving cream wants to sponsor the podcast and whatever razor wants to sponsor the podcast every
Yeah.
other day. So yes, if you want me to create shaving content, I'd be happy to because it is an every other day ordeal. That's how you keep this shiny cue ball up here.
Flex Pro Shave.
Why
There,
not?
there you go.
Yeah,
Flex Pro, yeah, Flex Pro coming to a local CVS near you.
that's right. Hey, we'll do it. I'll figure out a way to get forces of the fingers on a razor or something. Why not? But
Yeah.
before we derail too much, we're going to tie it back into the baseball world. And I know you and I talked about it offline a little bit, so I'm going to change the question from the usual, do you ever see yourself getting back on the field, to now it's going to be mixed up to, if you had your dream coaching scenario, role, whatever, what would your ideal position be? So you can maintain JV performance, but you get to coach in the summer, or you get to be the pitching coach for the San Francisco Giants, or maybe it's the bench coach. Who knows? It's your dream, it's your world. What is your ideal coaching scenario?
Ugh, this is probably gonna piss off some of my family, but because I grew up a Yankees fan, but I always have a very distinct dream of whenever I get back onto the field, like in this kind of, this kind of hypothetical scenario, being in Camden Yards. So I
Mm,
would probably have to say pitching coach for the Baltimore Orioles because that's the first stadium I ever went to. It is a cathedral for as much hate as Baltimore gets, and being a former Baltimore resident. I could see that side of it from the outsider's view. But as far as baseball history, there is a lot of baseball history in Baltimore with Babe Ruth being born here and the stadium being kind of built around the warehouse. It's a beautiful ballpark. The team is good. So if the Baltimore Department of Tourism wants to throw me some royalties based on this podcast, I'd be open to it. But yeah, I think they're fun. I could see in Adley's farewell tour maybe when he's 36 and they move him to DH or whatever full time. He's sitting in there in the video room with me and a couple of pitchers talking about how whatever they faced Paul Skeens one time and this is what he did, and now Paul Skeens is playing for the Mariners on a 1 year deal at age 33, whatever. I don't know. But that's kind of what I see. I always kind of have a soft spot for the Orioles because they kind of have like an underdog-esque to them. I think with the Yankees, they've always kind of been, the Giants, and not like the San Francisco Giants, but just like the big wigs of the league.
The team.
And additionally, if I had to say, I don't know how much the Steinbrenner family would appreciate Be Sexy on the back of Yankee pinstripes, but I think
You
that
do
the
have the
Orioles,
mustache, though.
I do have the mustache. I got a little bit of a mullet right now, so I don't think that's allowed. But I think the Orioles have a little bit more of a leash for personality. And it just kind of fits in with the Baltimore just has they just got a grit factor.
Yep.
Orioles, any of the Midwest Ohio teams, they just got that grit, and that's what I like. I like
And
the
you need
dirt. I
it.
like
You
the
got to
grind.
get some.
Yeah, get some, baby. Exactly.
That's right. Well, Jack, how can people reach you? Hopefully you get some people interested in learning more. I would love to say our podcast has provided that and hold that over you down the line. But regardless, if anybody wants to reach you, follow you, how do they do that?
Yeah, I'll just start by saying thanks again for having me. Like I said, you've had a lot of smart people on here, and so sometimes I think I have the dumbest job in the world, but making a connection with you helps kind of validate what I do. So I appreciate that. But you can follow me on social media. It's John B underscore SP. That's JOHNB underscore SP on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, if you want to call it that. I still call it Twitter. And then email is just jack@jackberryperformance.com. I do offer a free mechanical analysis. All the links for that are in my bio. Gives you the opportunity to connect with me through a Zoom call, talk about your training. Yeah, if you like my content, if you just want to reach out and just say hello, feel free to shoot me a DM. I post recipes here and there. I like cooking. So, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
And he did say free mechanical analysis, everyone. So no harm in taking him up on that.
There you
But
go.
Jack, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate your time today. Talked about some stuff I didn't expect to, but probably stuff that needs to be discussed. I at least like to think it needs to be discussed. So I appreciate you sharing your experiences, the whole gamut. And to everyone out there, thanks for laying back with us.